Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episodes on the Four Lad podcast of This Week in History. We seem to be going for quite a few weeks now. I think this is the 9th or 10th episode of it. Today we'll cover July the 16th to the 22nd, and it's an absolute pleasure to have someone new on with me this week. The young gun, the social media expert of the Four Lads podcast, Calvin, welcome.
Cheers, mate. So it's been a while since we podcast together, and then two in the space of 2 weeks, so good to always get a catch up with you, David. You always have the knowledge, whereas I have about a lot of young years less, and we'll find out about that today when we go through some of these.
I wouldn't worry about it, because you'll be able to see Rangers in 30 years' time, and I'll be Brown Breed by then, so don't worry about it.
Oh, no chance, mate. You'll live forever.
No, definitely. Okay, so for anyone that hasn't watched the show before, just to give you a quick idea how it all works. So we take the dates for the next 7 days, and we just go back in Rangers history over up to 154 years, just to keep Calvin on his toes. And we look at an event or a player or something associated with that particular date. And as this pod is going out on July the 16th, we will start with July the 16th. And seeing as it's Calvin, I thought I better not go back too far for July the 16th. So July the 16th, 2016. So don't ask me what Ibiza nightclub Calvin was in that night. But July the 16th, 2016, Rangers play their first competitive match after returning to the top flight of Scottish football. They defeat Motherwell 2-0 in the opening match of their League Cup group at Fir Park. So before I talk about that particular game, what about that summer, Calvin? You must remember that, getting back into the top flight at last.
Well, sometimes they're the summers that you don't remember that much. No, that was good, because it was the one where Warburton came back, wasn't it? Came in, sorry. David Weir came back. There was a lot of excitement around.
It was the summer after he had won the championship. So
yeah, because we went into the group, and it was their bit of revenge mission, the game that we were going to talk about, wasn't it? Because they kind of stopped us getting the return as early as we could. Yeah, totally down to ourselves, that right enough, because we were absolutely diabolical over those two games. I remember just sitting there going, what's going on? But it just showed where we were at the time, and we thought we were probably better than what we were when we went into that game, because we were totally destroyed. And then just over a year later, here we go, we get the return fixture. But the interesting thing about that was we did knock them out in the League Cup when we were in the second tier, didn't we? Because it was Fraser Aird scored before that. There you go, Davey. See?
Well, I remember we beat them in the League Cup when we were in the third division. Lee McCullough scored a goal, didn't he?
Fraser Aird
was live on telly,
that's one that didn't make any notes for. It was just something that I always remember, because it was one of the first times we put out somebody that was in the top division while we were still down the bottom. So they were probably seen it as a revenge mission when we had them in the playoffs, but we got them back, certainly.
So we had just won the championship. We'd beat Celtic in the semi-final of the Cup in penalties. Then we'd that disastrous Cup final against Hibs. And it was time to prepare for the Premier League, or the Premiership as it was then known. So by the time of this Motherwell game, the players that Mark Wallerton had brought in at that point to supplement, if you like, the Championship winning team: Josh Windass, Matt Crooks, Clint Hill, Joey Barton, Nico Cranshaw, and Jordan Rossiter. That he signed more after that, but by that point in time, by that Motherwell game, that was the players that he decided were going to help bring 55 back to Ibrox, right? And I'll talk about the game itself at Motherwell. He decided not to start any of them. Mm-hmm. That first game back, he actually played his championship winning team. Basically, most of the guys that had played against Celtic in that semi-final. Yeah. So, if I was to ask you, you said you've taken notes. So, are you able to rhyme off the team for this game against Motherwell?
I wasn't that much notes. Well, let's go. Wes would have been in goals.
Correct.
Tav, right back.
Yep.
Centre halves, Rob Kiernan.
Yep.
Danny Wilson.
You're good at this.
Left back of that team. Oh, that's slipping the mind. Stephen Smith, no? Was he the
left back? Was the captain of the team.
Lee Wallace, of course.
Wallace.
Forget he was still there. That was the year it all fell apart with him.
Later on.
maybe his fault, but that's a discussion for another day.
So then you had a midfield three, because Warburton always played 4-3-3, didn't he? So who would be the two in the middle?
That team would have been, who did we keep? Trying off the top of my head. He went with young team, but ZLM hadn't joined yet. Oh God, midfield's kind of stumped me here.
So it was Andy Halliday.
Yes.
Jason Holt and Harry Forrester.
Oh. that sums that up, didn't it?
And the front three.
Well, had Martin Waghorn been there?
Aye, it was basically the front three for the championship winning team. So Waghorn was one of them. Yeah.
Speed. Oh no, you've got me again. I went off to a flyer and I stumped myself.
Well, it was Waghorn, Kenny Miller.
Yep.
And the left winger was Barry Mackay.
Forget Barry Mackay was still at the team at that time.
Yeah, so as I said, that's very similar to the team that beat Celtic in the semi-final. Very similar. He did bring 3 substitutes on, and it was O'Halloran, Cheryl's pin-up, who we'll try and forget about. And then he brought in Windass and Cranshaw during the course of the game. So 2 new players did get a chance. Do you remember? We won 2-0. Do you remember anything about the 2 goals?
Tavernier penalty.
That was a Tavernier goal, wasn't it, a penalty?
Was he not scored a penalty, no?
No, it was a screamer, actually. Colour went to top corner for about 10 minutes.
And then Martin Waghorn scored the other one.
Waghorn did get the other one. So
just got the Tavernier one mixed up for a penalty.
He scored that many penalties. It's always a good guess.
But I remember the Tavernier and Waghorn because it was about the 2 of them came up together at the same time as the year before, and then the 2 of them scored the first goals into the start of the League Cup campaign.
So first day of the season, we come up, we beat Motherwell 2-0. What was the confidence levels going into that season with you?
I think everybody over, because of the Celtic game the year before, I think just about every Rangers fan over anticipated what we were going to do. I think that's the fair assumption. We all thought, we've done them in the Championship, but the big mistake was that doing them in when we were in the league, the Cup semi-final was probably what woke them up a wee bit. Yeah. At the time we've gone, those teams got to be better. We've brought in a young superstar. We brought in the next Steven Gerrard, Jordan Rosa at the time, and then we brought in experienced heads like Joey Barton. So we're all sitting there going, we could do this. And how wrong were we? Is probably the best way of putting it, because in the scary a Warburton interview, he said he listened to too many folk about what he should do with his transfer policy, because his full ethos for when he was at Brentford and everything was get young boys that aren't afraid to play, and he did the total opposite and brought in players that were at the end of their career who were feared to run. It's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah,
maybe if things just up to his own philosophy, things could have been different, but it did not.
Yeah, remember the going for 55 display at Ibrox against
Mark Warburton's magic hat.
Hamilton Accies, it was, wasn't it? It was Hamilton Accies. Yeah. Anyway, I've just very quickly finished with that particular League Cup run. So, I don't know if you remember it, but the group we ended up with, after beating Motherwell, we beat Annan 2-0, we beat East Stirling 3-0, we beat Stranraer 3-0. So we didn't concede a goal in the group. The last 16, Peterhead at Ibrox 5-0. Quarter final, Queen of the South 5-0 at Ibrox. So here we are, 20 odd goals, none conceded. Then unfortunately we had to play Celtic in the semi-final. Matt Jilks in goal, if I remember rightly, and
the old Blackpool keeper. I didn't actually mind him. He was a good keeper. Just was in a bit of a random team at the time. Just getting to come out of nowhere. Also could have played for Scotland at the time as well.
We lost 1-0. That Dembele scored just a couple of minutes to go. And the season went downhill from that. Well, it was actually already going downhill, but it went even further downhill from that point onwards. So this day in 2016, we were a wee bit more confident or a wee bit more positive than we were a few months later. I think it's fair to say.
I think when we started seeing everybody falling out in the dressing room at their place, and then Wallace was gone, Miller was gone, Barton's was gone. Just that experience that he brought in that he was looking forward to having, all kind of just fell apart. And much like the kind of what happened to the rest of the season for there, just things just didn't work out. It kind of showed. If you probably think about it, the Motherwell game, we were all probably like, normal has resumed, we are back. And then 2 months later, it was, what's happened to this team? Because we were just miles short of everything.
Yeah, and it ended up in third place, obviously.
Yeah. Was that the one where a certain team let another team win the last day of the season to stop us getting second as well? A year later.
That was the following season, wasn't it? I'm sure that the first season, Kashinya was in charge by the end of it, and Aberdeen beat us in the midweek at Ibrox to confirm that they were going to finish second. Derek McInnes's Aberdeen ended up finishing second.
We don't need to worry about that anymore.
Correct. Anyway, so that was July the 16th, 2016. I dawned and then faded again pretty quickly afterwards. But the Warburton era. So I'm going to go to July the 17th, 2009. But although it's 2009, we're probably going to end up talking about years prior to that, because July the 17th, 2009, Barry Ferguson ended his Rangers playing career by leaving the club for a second time. He signed for Birmingham City for a fee of £1.2 million, which I suppose, looking back, was a hell of a small fee for Barry Ferguson.
As it turned out for them.
Yeah. So, before I say my Barry Ferguson bit, you're just a boy, but you must remember. But I don't know how much you remember of his first spell, but you must certainly remember his second spell.
I remember a good bit. Obviously, probably the first proper bit I remember is scoring the free kick in the cup, the cup final against Celtic. I remember bits before, but that's like the first standout memory for myself is what I can think of, because I remember it being live in the telly. It was still on BBC at the time, those games. Flying in, Lovencrantz double that day. That's probably the first proper memory I have of Barry Ferguson. And what a memory it is to have to start me off, because it was leading to a trophy. The team was there, and what a free kick it was, let's be honest. And he was amazing that day. He was always in the front foot, and as a young boy, you were running about with the Rangers captain band in your sleeve, with your Fitbit kits, and you were all wanting to be Barry Ferguson, or some people wanted to be Lovencrantz, but that was your main two at the time. I'd probably say, as a young kid, everybody was doing the part. You were Barry 1 or Barry 2 or Barry 3, pretty much. That's what everybody wanted to be. We wanted to be the wee stripes in your hair to kind of match him as well. So that was kind of my first Barry Ferguson memory. And one to kind of put on there when he left to go to Blackburn, I ended up with a Blackburn tap at the time because he was my favourite player. So there was plenty of things I remember Barry Ferguson, but that's the very first thing. That free kick, unbelievable.
So I personally think that Barry Ferguson's the best Scottish footballer of this century. I don't think there's been a better football player in Scotland or Scottish since the year 2000. I think there's been one.
I think if anybody tries to compare certain other captains for other teams to Barry Ferguson, they are mentally deluded, because they're not even on the same level as player. I think if you even look at how he went down later in his career, like, he was still good at Blackburn after his injuries, but obviously things happened. But if you let's speak to any Birmingham fan, he dragged that team to win that Carling Cup at the time against Arsenal. Like, that Birmingham team shouldn't have done it, but if you ask anybody down there, he was a standout. And if you look at every passing stat under the sun at that time when he was at Birmingham, he pretty much topped the charts. It was at least in the top 2. Barry Ferguson as a football player was levels above pretty much anything that's came through Scotland. And you can argue your McTominay and everything like that now, but football's different. Barry also had three major knee operations by that stage, so he was in the final stage of his career. Barry Ferguson is probably the best Rangers player I've seen in person that you're even close to it. Barry 1 and Barry 2 probably, when he came back, was probably that level. Even charity game Barry is still up there probably.
I think, knowing your age, I think if I was your age, I would be saying Barry Ferguson was the best Rangers player I've ever seen. I think I would be saying that. So I'll throw in his stats and stuff, just because we usually do that when we're talking about any player for the past. So 428 games, 61 goals, 5 league titles, 5 Scottish Cups, 5 League Cups. He was actually inducted into the Hall of Fame when he was at Blackburn, in between his 2 spells. So when he came back the second time, he was actually already a Rangers Hall of Fame player when we brought him back. 45 caps for Scotland, which should have been a lot more, to be honest with you. He's a giant of modern Scottish football for me. But I'm going to give you my first memories about it. You talk about your first memories about Barry Ferguson. So I remember right from the start. Yeah, I know. I'm going to get pelters for this, but I don't care. So he made his debut the last day of 9 in a row. See, that the very last day of the season, when the season we won it at Tannadice on the Wednesday night, the Lloyd-Ups header, and on the Saturday we went to Tynecastle, and the league was won, and Walter Smith rested a few players, and I think they were still half cut for the Wednesday night, to be honest with you. And 19-year-old Barry Ferguson got his debut that day. And he was regarded as the next big thing. He was going to be the guy Rangers were going to build their team round after that. That's what everybody said. Then came the following season, the season that should have been 10 in a row, but wasn't. And I'm going to do something that's never done in Rangers podcast. I am going to criticise Walter Smith. That's why I said this is. That's why I said this is going to be really unpopular, right?
Maybe the first person to ever do that.
No, I know. If I look at what we did that summer, at that time, Gascoigne was still there, but he was already becoming a bit unreliable. I think that's the best way of putting it, both in terms of fitness and in terms of attitude. And the rest of the midfield were all kind of much of a... There was Ian Ferguson, there was Stuart McCall, there was Derek McInnes, there was Craig Moore who played in midfield, believe it or not then. All kind of physical, ball-winning types, all guys that would win the ball, but you want to get them to then give it to somebody else who would then create or then be a playmaker. We didn't really have a playmaker apart from Gaza.
Yep.
And Walter decided to buy Rino Gattuso that summer for, I don't know, I think he got him for a development fee or something, but he was only 18. He was just a teenager. He was a year younger than Ferguson. And in that following season, Ferguson only played 7 times and Gattuso played 38 times. And we didn't win the league. And I think we didn't win the league because we weren't creative enough when we needed to be. And I personally think if Walter had been a wee bit braver, and I get the fact he was under so much pressure to deliver 10 in a row, I totally get that. But I still think to this day that if he had a bit more bravery to pick Ferguson more often that season, we'd have won 10 in a row. And I'll forever have this regret that we didn't win the league that season. It's really hard to criticise Walter Smith, and I totally get the pressures he was under. I totally get it, but I still think he was wrong.
By your argument to say if you didn't believe we were creative enough, there was very few players long for the next 10, 15 years, 20 years who was creative as Barry Ferguson. So it'd be hard to disagree with it there, because we all know what Gattuso was. He was a bulldog. He was just somebody. And for some of the stories that I've heard about his time in training, it might be a few reasons why the team wasn't always as good on a Saturday.
And the other thing he did was he actually did bring another midfield player. He brought in Jonas Term, who was the captain of Sweden, who was more their kind of playmaker, attacking midfield player. But he was injured for the whole season. He played about 3 or 4 games at the start, and then he disappeared for about 4 or 5 months. That 4 or 5 month period in the middle of Barry Ferguson should have been. Anyway,
it's always interesting. Even if you think about it, that kind of Rangers team, there were always young boys that were kicking about in that team. There was always players that came through and laid down their marker. So the argument with Barry Ferguson should have played more might be hard to disagree with, because every young player came through at certain stage, like your Durants and everything like that. They all came through and made them their marker, and they always had that chip on their shoulder that they should be above the big boys. So it could have been exactly right what you're thinking. And
I think maybe the way I'm thinking got strengthened, I suppose, the following season, because Dick Advocaat came in and he had more money to spend than any Rangers manager had ever seen in their life before. He was bringing in all these international players. If he'd wanted to bring in a midfield general playmaker, he'd have brought one in, but he didn't. He decided he already had one in his squad. And he basically built this team of international players round about this 20-year-old, 21-year-old Scottish midfielder who quite often, despite the fact you had Arthur Newman and you had Van Bronckhorst and you had all these guys in the team, despite that, Ferguson was the guy that made that team tick.
And he made them captain quite soon after, didn't he? So that tells you a lot. The young guy with the attitude that could boss anybody about because he had bled blue. That was essentially it. He knew everything about the club, and every player that came through that door, he could drive the standards. And there's one thing you could probably say about Barry, no matter what he is, he always drove standards.
Absolutely.
Because he played numerous jags, numerous medicines to get himself through, painkillers. He played more times hurt than any player will probably play hurt ever again, because players don't do that anymore. And he ran through brick walls for that Rangers team every time. So that's one of the big things I always remember about Barry. You know, he had these knee problems. You knew he'd be on his last legs trying to pull himself out in the park, but you would never tell when he got across that white line. He was always there. and he always looked the fittest in the park no matter what, which is the scary thing when he was playing with probably one knee.
So, you say captain at 22-year-old, the captain that then won that Scottish Cup final that you're talking about under McLeish, which I think's, for anyone that's there, it'll always be one of their favourite cup finals because it was last-minute winners against Celtic. They don't come up that often at Hardy. Captain of the treble team the following season, when what a goal scorer! He suddenly became a goal scorer midfielder that season.
He always played about an extra 15 yards up the park that season, didn't he?
I've not got it written down. I think he scored about 18 goals or something that season, which was...
It was around about the 20 mark. That's one of the things I do remember, because you always used to be like, who scored this week? Barry.
He was absolutely... And he won all the Player of the Year awards, and then he went to Blackburn, obviously, which I think was more to do with the finances at Ibrox than it was anything to do with what he wanted. Came back for Helicopter Sunday, which is another all-time favourite occasion. So that's another one he's played in. And I suppose the next thing to talk about for him was the Le Guen bit. The bit that I think when you talk about driving standards and people who understand what Rangers are and people who don't understand what Rangers are, I think the perfect example of it is the clashing of heads between Paul Le Guen and Barry Ferguson.
100%. And I think if you look at, I remember it was Chris Boyd was on a podcast the other day, he said the same thing. He said Le Guen was a good coach, but he just didn't understand what that Rangers team was all about, and he was changing everything. Well, obviously took away their monster munch and everything, so that's never going to go down well at Ibrox with that team. So you have to be very careful. And I think the biggest thing is, if you look at that time, Le Guen was one of the biggest managers in Europe, and David Murray immediately sided with Barry Ferguson. So that tells you everything you need to know about that situation, where the dressing room was, where they saw they were going to get the biggest return on anybody, and the person that was going to potentially win them league titles. And it did spark a right good spell after it. So sometimes you need to take the bad bit with it with the good.
You could argue that Ferguson's disagreement with Le Guen is the starting point of Walter coming back.
Yeah. So there was only one man they could have got to fix that situation so quickly.
Yeah. I was at Motherwell that day when Boyd scored and put the six fingers up for the penalty, and it wasn't quite Russell Martin like, but there was certainly a real undercurrent of people who didn't like the manager anymore. it was a wee bit toxic that day. But anyway, we'll finish with Ferguson's second spell. So obviously, lots more trophies, European final. Yep. Still the best player in the team. He was still the best player in the team at that point.
And he drove the standards around every one of those young midfielders that came around him as well. And just had the respect to everybody, that's what you could see. But he also had the likes of Davy Weir and everything at the time. But that team summarised what a Rangers team is to me. There's a few really high quality players, but the team was all workhorses that they've gave everything for each other. And they knew what it meant. They could be absolute battling with teams, especially when it came to the league games. Obviously, that European runs they had was great. But if you look at the league games, they had to unpack team after team after team after team. And that was always, like I've said before, the first 60 minutes of a battle and then your quality takes over. We had a lot of battles and eventually always came through in the end. But with the master, the 1-0 win for a good few spells into that there. But you'll take a 1-0 win than dropping points any other day of the week.
Absolutely. I suppose to finish the Barry Ferguson bit, it's just a wee bit sad how it all ended. Remember the disciplinary thing with Scotland, him and Alan McGregor both get dropped. And so it meant at the run-in, he was on the bench. Him and McGregor were both on the bench, and it was Davy Weir that was the captain and Neil Alexander in goal. But then when it came to the cup final, after we had won the league, Mendes and Edu both get injured at Tannadice, and when Ferguson came back for the cup final. So his last game for Rangers was when they beat Falkirk 1-0 at Hampden in the Scottish Cup final. So his last act was lifting a trophy over his head.
Was that the day Chris Boyd went off with heat stroke at half time or something as well?
It was.
Heat stroke in a game at Hampden. You never seen it, but Chris Boyd
managed it. That day, by the way.
It worked though, because Novo came off the bench at half time and put in that rasper. So the wonder goal. So it worked. And what a good send off for Barry Ferguson is that, because you'd have hated to have seen him to leave without getting to pull on the jersey one last time. Let's be honest. He deserves it. And it's the situation that happened with the Boosgate is a respect thing in the game there, but it's Barry. It's Barry. You know what I mean? For my generation, he was our captain, and then when he came back for the management role for that short spell, you could tell everybody was buzzing for him and really wanted him to be. So, as a Rangers base, he's up there with one of our top legends.
Yeah. So, July the 17th, 2009 was Barry Ferguson's last day as a Rangers player. But as you say, every day since July the 17th, 2009, he's been a Rangers legend.
Probably before then, because he was a Hall of Famer.
Correct. Okay. So, July the 18th, this is when you can sip your lager for 5 minutes because you'll know absolutely nothing about this one. July the 18th, I'm going to go back to 1895 because I always do one really old one every podcast. So you're getting it in July the 18th. A guy called Thomas Craig, or Tully Craig, was born in the village of Lauriston near Falkirk in July the 18th, 1895. Now, most people watching this podcast will now say, who the heck is Tully Craig? Quite rightly too. First of all, I'll tell you why he's called Tully. He was brought up in a village called Tullybody near Alloa, and his teammates gave him this nickname because he came from Tullybody. So Tully became his. Nobody called him Tom or Thomas. It was Tully. So anyway, a quick history lesson about Tully Craig and why I'm talking about him tonight. So Tully Craig is the best example I can find of someone who had was a late bloomer in his football career. So he was actually still playing junior football at the age of 24. And he finally got his chance in the senior game. And who did he sign for at the age of 24 in 1919? He signed for Celtic. Yeah, I know. And he played for them for 3 years. He only played for them 8 times. I don't know how many goals he scored because I can't be arsed looking up Celtic statistics, but I do know that he only played for them 8 times. They played him as a what was called back then an inside forward, which we'd probably call an attacking midfielder. The Celtic manager at the time was Willie Maley, who was regarded as their greatest manager before Jock Stein. He decided Tully Craig wasn't good enough for Celtic. And he quite liked the centre forward that was playing for Alloa at the time. Don't know his name. Willie Crilly or something. Anyway, he made Tully Craig this a make-weight in a transfer to bring this Alloa centre forward to Celtic Park, to Parkhead. So Tully get bumped down to Alloa. And that, to most people, that's the start of the downward journey. And don't forget, he's 27 by this time. He had 1 season at Alloa. Alloa moved him back as a wing half, a defensive midfield player. And although Alloa get relegated, Craig was by far the best player all season. And he impressed Bill Struth so much in the 2 games against Rangers that in the summer of 1923, Bill Struth paid Alloa £750 for him, which was a wee bit of money back in don't ask me how much it is, but it's a wee bit of money. Now, Tully Craig was just short of his 28th birthday at this point in time. Right? Just short of 28. Never won anything in his life. By the time he retired as a player, 12 years later, just before his 40th birthday, he had won almost 20 trophies for Rangers. He had played in 10 league title winning seasons. He only won a medal in 7 of them because in the last few years he was more of a backup because he was getting on a bit. But he refused to leave the club. He got a few offers to leave, and he always said, I'd rather be a backup at Rangers than play for any inferior club in Scotland. So he stayed till he was nearly 40. He won 7 league medals, but won 10 league titles. He played in the famous to me, 1928 Scottish Cup final when Rangers hadn't won the league for 25 years. They beat Celtic 4-0. He played in that game. He scored the winning goal in the 1930 Cup final against Partick Thistle. He won lots of Glasgow Cups. He won lots of charity cups. So in effect, he ended up with nearly 20 winners' medals and didn't join Rangers till he was nearly 28-year-old. And Willie Maley said he wasn't good enough to play for Celtic. By the way, he also won 8 Scotland caps after the age of 30. So I think he's probably the best example I've ever found of somebody. It's like, who have we bought in recent years that's maybe been towards the end of their career, had never won it, and then suddenly they become an absolute superstar. I'm just going to add this. There's Tully Craig on the left-hand side. Now, that was in 1930, so he's nearly 35 years old. That's him and the great Rangers captain Davy Meikle join in the middle with the Scottish Cup, the 2 goal scorers. So he scored the winning goal in the cup final. That's why he's in that picture. So I'll just take it away again, just so you know what he looks like. So Tilly Craig, not good enough for Celtic. Joined Rangers at nearly 28. Won the league 10 times. Scored the win in the Scottish Cup final. Played for Scotland 8 times. And didn't leave Rangers until he was given the job of Falkirk manager in 1935. How's that for a story?
That's up there, mate. That's a good one. As I said, there's no many across the divide. There's a one for way before, and it just shows you that no matter when football's aged, some players work for certain teams and others don't. And it depends on the manager that you have, the position that you play in, the confidence that they put you in, the management of the player. There's players out there, no matter how their first a spell at somewhere's went before. Obviously, that's a bit more interesting because it came across for the dark side of the city. But there's multiple examples you could probably find for a player that's just not worked somewhere and they turn up here, and you probably tend to find the opposite way about when it comes to us. There's players who are thriving somewhere and they come up here and they just absolutely destroy themselves in the fishbowl. So an absolute belter there, mate. Player that I've obviously never heard of because I was minus 101 at the time.
And I suppose that the one thing I didn't say is that he is a member of the Rangers Hall of Fame now. So I don't know if he's probably not the only one, but he is. There's an ex-Celtic player in the Rangers Hall of Fame. So whenever you go to the museum, you'll see him in there's a big sort of wall that's got all the Hall of Fame players on it. So you'll see Tilly Craig up on that.
You walk past it and go, but he ended up all right.
And maybe just the last thing to say in Tilly Craig would be that I said that he played for 12 years. Rangers won the league in 10 of them. Celtic only won it once. So in all the years that he played for Rangers, Celtic only won one title. It
was the other one.
1932, Motherwell.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, so that was Tilly Craig. We'll get back a wee bit more up to date. Wouldn't be hard, I suppose. July the 19th. So July the 19th, I'm going to go to 1990, which I know is before you were born, but I'm going to talk about a player I know that you know about. Right? July the 19th, 1990. Graham Souness finally gets his man by signing English striker Mark Hateley from AS Monaco for £1 million. Mark Hateley, what a signing he turned out to be. What is the younger generation? I mean, obviously you see him as a club ambassador now, and you see him advertising stuff at Ibrox and stuff, but I know his career would have been before your time, but I'll bet you your dad talked about him, or I bet you must have heard of him, surely. You
don't know me. My dad's not much of a football fan. That's the best of it. That's why I go to the clubs. He was a raver. But there's things I always remember at Mark Hateley. The biggest thing for me was obviously the Battle of Britain. It's something that always sticks out, and you've watched it a million times, regardless of whether you were born or not. At the time, you'll see loads and loads about it. But I've got an interesting one about Mark Hateley, and it's podcast related. So I've met Mark Hateley before, and it's because Stevie actually brought me in to do a pre-recording at a studio one time, and it was Mark Hateley and Alec Ray were just leaving just before we went in. So that's my strange fact about Mark Hateley. I've met him in a poddy just before I started. It was probably about. Do you want to know what it was? It was the day when Tavernier scored that free kick at Tannadice, the one that was in the centre, 40 yards out. So that's the day that I met Mark Hateley.
The COVID season. Right.
COVID season. So we were recording a pod, so it was. You were getting in, everything was wiped down, and then out walked Mark Hateley and Alec Ray for the studio that I was going into. So that's my wee interesting kind of run in with Mark Hateley. You can always remember the partnership that him and McCoy did.
Yeah.
How he's long hair and then just his big head that he was getting on at the end of everything. And he loved an elbow. He loved an elbow line out when he was getting his jump. So that's something I always remember for any highlights and everything that I've seen him or anything past that kind of spell he had with Rangers.
So I'll get, before I talk about my memories, I better give the stats because I always give the stats for these players. I didn't do Tilly Craig's, probably should have. Anyway, stats were 222 games, 115 goals. So that's no bad. He won the title every season he played for us. He's got 5 league medals, but he actually played in 2 other seasons. One of them was a famous coming back for a second spell, just for a couple of months for a game against Celtic in the 9-in-a-row season. Won 3 League Cups, 2 Scottish Cups, and the 2 Scottish Cups he won, he scored in both the finals. Member of the Hall of Fame. He actually was also voted into the Greatest 11. don't know if you remember, there was Rangers fans in 1999 voted for who they thought was the greatest 11 players that ever played for us. And
I was 5 at the time, so I reckon the greatest team that I'll have seen it there would have been Stefan Klos.
I was going to say Teletubbies.
Arthur Newman, Barry Ferguson, Lorenzo Amoruso, Craig Moore. That time, that's all I had in my head at the time.
Yeah. I'll maybe... I think...
I'd still say that.
It was always... The team, the 11 that get picked, obviously was... Most of them were very modern, and it was just who people had seen. It was never, there was never going to be Alan Morton in it, for example. It should be there. So anyway, so Big Hateley. So when Big Hateley signed, he actually was carrying an injury, and Souness made Hateley really unpopular from the start because he dropped Alan McCoist for him. So at the start of his first season, his main strike partner was Maurice Johnson. Now, if you look at the way Hateley played, he was very different from the other two. He was a big target man, more physical, better in the air, etc. So, in effect, Souness didn't drop McCoist for Hateley. He decided to play a different way. And then, of the other two, he actually decided Johnson was better than McCoist. It wasn't Hateley's fault, I don't think. But he was a wee bit unpopular at the start. And as I said, I don't think he was fully fit. Because once he got fit, you suddenly found that you didn't just have this big target man. He was actually a right good football player. He had a terrific left foot, and he was really quick. Yeah. And I don't know if you have ever seen this, so I'll just mention it for younger folk. Find a YouTube clip of, it's a game Rangers played in season 1991-92. I think it's at the end of 1991 at Pittodrie. We won 3-2. We score this breakaway goal that starts in our own byline with Gary Stevens, and Hateley scores it. You should see the turn of pace he's got in it. Seriously, he is lightning. He scored every kind of goal imaginable, Big Hateley, including that one at Leeds. I think that you're talking about. But probably the day that it all turned for him was the day that he scored the 2 goals against Aberdeen that won the league. Just after Walter was appointed, Souness had left, Walter got appointed. Aberdeen just needed a draw to win the league. At Ibrox, we beat them 2-0 and Hateley scored both goals. The first of them are absolute. What a header it was. My God, what a header it was. From Mark Walter's cross. And from that point on, his Rangers career just completely changed. He was a force of nature for the next few years. He really was. He absolutely bullied Celtic almost every time he played. He scored 9 times against Celtic. He scored at Ibrox. He scored against Parkhead. He scored at Hampden. My favourite Hateley goal isn't the one at Elland Road, although it's close. We played Celtic in a League Cup semi-final in 1993, and Hampden was getting done up, so they played at Ibrox, but they gave Celtic half the pit, the stadium. So we had the main stand and the Copeman Road, and they had the Broomloan and the Govan. It's the only time ever that Ibrox looked like that. And Peter Houstra gets sent off just after half time. So we had 10 against 11, and Hateley scored with about 15 minutes to go, and we beat them 1-0. For the celebration, not for the goal, it was a tap-in. Who cares what the goal was like? For the occasion and for the celebration after it, that was my favourite Mark Hateley goal. And as I say, he went on, great partnership with McCoist. His best season was probably the season McCoist was out for most of it with his broken leg. Gorham was missing. Gough missed a lot of that season. John Brown missed a lot of that season. Stuart McCall, Davy Robertson. We were walking wounded for most of it. Hateley carried us. He was absolutely unplayable. He won the Player of the Year. He won the Scottish Player of the Year. He won the Players' Player of the Year. He was just incredible. And even then, England wouldn't play him. Because the last thing I've got written for him here is he's got 32 England caps and only won one of them when he was a Rangers player. And it was a friendly. Talk about shooting yourself in the foot. He was the best centre forward in Britain at the time.
Do you think it's mental? Because Rangers did go through a spell where nearly half the team was England internationals. So the situation with Mark Hateley there, who was probably one of the most informed strikers in Europe, never mind just English born, surely should have been a shout. at least a shout, at least in the squad, never mind in the team.
It makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. Could even ask him, was it been Graham Taylor the manager then? Probably. I think it'd been Graham Taylor.
It'd been the start of Shearer as well.
Yeah,
Start of Shearer.
I still think at that in the early 90s, 91, 92, 93, I don't think there was a better of that type of player, of that type of centre forward. I don't think there was a better one in Britain.
Well, you look at the kind of spell about Rangers at that time in Europe. Obviously, kicked on a wee bit longer when it became the Champions League, but 2 finals nearly back to back. So 5 minutes kind of cost it in both situations. So that the teams around then, like the players, there was very few better anywhere in the world. So they should have been in. Pretty much all the players should have been shout at national levels at all times.
I still think that Marseille were the team that ended up winning the Champions League in 92, 93. They drew I know. They drew with us twice, but they never had to play Rangers when we had McCoist and Hateley in the team.
Yeah, and it was Milan.
McCoist was injured the first time. Hateley was suspended the second time for a red card against Bruges. I think if we had both of them in both of the games, there's every chance we'd have been in the Champions League final.
It was Milan they played in the final, wasn't it? But it was a Milan that was very aging and kind of at the end of their peak, which probably gave them every opportunity to win it. But Rangers would have probably a fully fit Rangers who had both our animals up front would have been right up there.
Ali had broke his leg by that time, unfortunately. So anyway, Mark Hateley, without doubt, one of the greatest centre forwards in modern Rangers history. Whether he should be in the greatest 11's up for debate in my head, but what a player he was for the Rangers. What a player.
Superstar, that's the easiest way to describe, isn't it? He was played across Europe, very few clubs with a better striker than Mark Hateley. And it's the way that he carried himself as a Rangers player as well. The attitude, somebody that's came in for down south, obviously, even though he came in for the Italian leagues we signed him from.
Monaco, but he played for Milan before that, yeah.
Milan, Monaco, then to us, but he just epitomised everything you wanted for a Rangers player. Fearless, ruthless. And that's probably 2 of the biggest things you need as a Rangers player. You need to be ruthless in front of goal, ruthless on the park, but you need to have the cojones essentially to always be able to deal with the pressure. And that's something that Mark Hateley, and as you said, he had probably had a difficult start because the fans weren't happy that Ali wasn't playing at the time. But he carried that weight and he managed to perform time and time again, scoring big, iconic moments and some of the biggest iconic moments we've had as a club.
Yeah. So, July the 19th, 1990, we remember Mark Hateley. We then go on to July the 20th. Now, although I'm going back to 1973, don't worry, it's not a game for 1973. July the 20th, 1973, Claudio Reyna was born in Livingston. Why, Livingston, New Jersey, though, not Livingston, near
That was going to be my fun fact. Where was he born that wasn't in Scotland?
Livingston, New Jersey. I don't know if you remember, you won't remember him signing for Rangers, but there was no transfer windows when he signed for us. It was the Advocates' first season.
That was fun. There's a chance.
There's a chance. The man we talked about earlier, Barry Ferguson, got an injury and his season was done. And we had this run in, and Celtic still had a chance of catching us, and we still had the Scottish Cup to play for. And because Dick Advocat had these big deep pockets that he always had lots of money in, that he decided to bring in midfield reinforcements for the run in. And he bought Reyna. And his transfer was actually really complicated because he played for Bayer Leverkusen, but he was on loan for the season to Wolfsburg. So because it meant the loan had to get stopped before it was actually up. Rangers had to actually pay both clubs. They gave Leverkusen get some. I don't think they get some like 80% of the fee, but Wolfsburg get some like 20% of the fee, so that both clubs had to get money to let him go. Did you see much of Claudio Reyna?
He probably the Rangers top the blue with the white NTL on it. It's probably the first one I remember. So I've seen him, but I was very young. But I do remember him being a very good player because I remember him a bit more after when he was at Man City. And I remember still thinking he played with Rangers when I was still coming as a young boy. But he's probably the one thing I always remember since then. He's probably the one American that's been very, very good. You've had some average Americans that have played for us, but he's probably been the one that's consistently been good. I know people will talk about Bockregger had a good spell, but it was 1 year. And fair play to him, he was one of the players that kept the contract so we could have got money in that stage. But for me, as Americans, he's probably the best that we've had. Because very good, top technical player. And he wasn't. He was calm but feisty. Is probably a good way of putting it. He was never feared of very much, which is always good. So I remember bits and bobs of Cloud Arena, but he'd have been probably that first starting memories that I remember at Rangers, and it's more to do with kits and probably less to do with performances at that stage, because it was probably just after that I start remembering the games of football. But I do remember Reina being a top player at the time. As I said, went to Man City after us, and it's still something that kind of sticks out in my head.
Yeah, so one of the first, it wasn't the first game he played, but within a few weeks coming into the team, he played in that mental 3-0 game at Parkhead that we won the league when Neil McCann scored twice. And they were, Hugh Dallas got hit by coins, and there was folk jumping off the top of the stand and stuff. That crazy. he played in that. I'll do his stats as 96 games, 11 goals. Played in 2 league title wins. I don't know if he got a medal for that first one, because the time he came in, he can't have played any more than 7 or 8 games. I don't think he would have got a medal for the first one.
10 games into it if you want a league title, unless it was different. But
he certainly got a medal for the next season, the 99-2000. He certainly got a medal for it, and he played in the Oldham Scottish Cup final against Aberdeen. So he got a Scottish Cup medal and a league medal that second season. Reina was just, as you said, a really calm, clever, composed, very difficult to get the ball off, but he could win a tackle as well. I think that was the side of his game. I think when we didn't see as much as they saw the settlers. And when you think about the midfielders that Advocate had to pick from when he had Reina, he hardly ever dropped for him. Reina was hardly ever a substitute. Yeah. And he had Ferguson, Van Bronckhorst, Alberts, Tugai. Then he had wingers like McCann, Kanchelskis, and he only played 4. He always played 4-4-2. So, and he actually played him right back for a while as well. He played him on the right side of midfield, and he played him at right back sometimes. And he played quite well there as well. to be fair,
if we think about that type of player, so everybody always remembers the goal scorers, and that's why it's probably harder for somebody like myself who's dead young to think about Reina. But if you think about performance levels, because he was calm, technically gifted, a good decision maker, he was a worker as well, and he could always just kind of keep control of the situations. It's why he can probably move around different positions and be in there. He was, even though he wasn't always the trimmest player, if I always remember right. As an Americans, they're athletes. No matter when they come through, they're athletes, and they can run for days, and they can get in your face. And they've not, the biggest thing they have is attitude into it. They've got that wee attitude that they are very good. They're amazing at what they do. I think that's what sums up Reina. He was just a calm, technically gifted player who was able to make the correct decisions on the park, and that's why you could have put him anywhere on the pitch and he would give you at least a 7 out of 10. And it's why he lasted so well. And he's probably the first American that kind of paved the way for Americans coming into Europe, if you think about it. Because around that time, you probably had very little that made that flight across the Atlantic, and he was probably one of the first ones to do it. Germany, Scotland, and obviously down in England. So
yeah, well, we all called him Captain America, didn't
we? PSV or something like that as well, Reina?
Say again?
Was he at PSV, Reina? No?
If he was, I don't remember it.
I can't remember.
I remember he went to Sunderland after us, and I remember he went to...
That's what it is, the red and white stripes, so that's probably what it's been. It
was Sunderland he left to join when he left Rangers. So I suppose most people's memory of Claudio Reyna will probably go against Parma, because what a night that was, what an atmosphere there was that night inside Ibrox, and he got the second goal that night, the one that ended up being the decider, because we won 2-1 in aggregate. His last game was another big European night against PSG in Paris, when we knocked him out in penalties.
A young Ronaldinho playing that night?
Ronaldinho was playing, and Arteta was playing that night. Pochettino was playing that night. They had a few players in their team.
Parma PSG teams had a few players that went on to do pretty special things after they were taken care of by the Rangers.
Yeah. And the daft memory I've got of Claudio Reyna, maybe 2 of them, but one especially. His last goal for Rangers was actually up at Dingwall in a League Cup tie against Ross County. He scored the winner in a game that we eventually were down to 10 men. We were 2-1 up. In injury time, Amoruso gets sent off. They got a penalty, but Stefan Klos saved it. So we get through 2-1. If we get knocked out that night, the Bert Konterman goal would never have happened, and because that was the round before it. So Claudio's unsung goal, because we had so many good memories after it, but it wouldn't have happened because of that. And the other thing I was going to say about him was that when he played for America, he was more a kind of a number 8. He was a box-to-box player with America. More than 100 caps for them, captained them for years and years.
Yep.
He very rarely played that position for us because we had Barry Ferguson and Giovanni Van Bronckhorst in the centre of midfield and Alberts. So he would tend to be shunted out to the right more than he played centrally. The game I remember, Advocat played him centrally in a game at Tynecastle. And it was just about the same time we played Parma. We beat them 4-0 beat Hearts 4-0 at Tynecastle. Michael Morse with a great goal that day. Rayner was absolutely brilliant. He scored twice. And he was this box-to-box. What's he been all this time? You know, because we've been sitting watching him playing right back and all kinds of stuff, and suddenly he played there. He was absolutely fantastic. He was in Rob done a pod called Unsung Heroes, and I've got Rayner in my midfield for it because I think he was one of these unsung players that was, I bet every teammate was glad he was there.
Yeah, but I think that's what I was kind of looking at earlier, just that type of professionalism in a player that if you could put your heart in somebody just turning up for your team regardless, that's Claudio Reyna, especially knowing that he had the ability to do that number 8 position, box to box, be attacking, be defensive, and he was happy to play right mid, right back, or wherever he was asked in the midfield because he knew what the likes of Barry Ferguson, etc., had to bring to that team. I think that's a remarkable thing about the man himself. He was selfless, is probably the best way to say it, because he probably could have had a much better Rangers career if he was more vocal about where he wanted to be on the park, but he had the respect about these players around the team to just say, wherever you need me, I'll be. And he always put in a performance. So that's probably one of the best things you can say about Claudio Reyna. He never let the team down.
Absolutely. It's an unsung hero. So that was July the 20th. July the 21st, we're going to talk about another midfield player. One who did wear the number 8. July the 21st, 1999. Rangers defeat Sunderland 3-1 at Ibrox in a testimonial match for long-serving midfielder Ian Ferguson. So we've just talked about unsung heroes and we've just talked about a guy who puts the team first and all that kind of stuff. The guy for me in the whole 9-in-a-row era who put the team before himself more than anyone else was Ian Ferguson. He was this dynamic attacking midfielder at St Mirren. Remember, he scored the winning goal in the Scottish Cup final for St Mirren against Dundee United in 1987 when he was about 20 or something. Manchester United wanted him. Alex Ferguson wanted to take him down to Old Trafford. And Souness wanted him at Ibrox. And there was only ever going to be one place he ended up. And it wasn't Old Trafford. Came to Rangers. And his first full season was the first season in 9 in a row. And he scored loads of goals. In fact, he was really good in the bus for getting in the sweep because he kept scoring the first goal at Ibrox quite a lot. But after that, or it's quite soon after that, when Walter took over, Walter played a slightly different way. And he basically wanted his midfield to be more pragmatic. He had like Stuart McCall and Ferguson, and then he had four attackers in front of him, two wingers and 2 strikers. And Ferguson reinvented himself. He totally reinvented himself. He turned himself from this dynamic, attacking, goal-scoring, goal-threat midfielder into this snarling, ball-winning, ultra-competitive, you shall not get past me, defensive type of midfield player. And he done it because that's what Rangers needed of him. It's actually it's as simple as that. I'll talk about his stats, I'll talk about his medals, I'll talk about, and there's plenty of that to talk about. But for me, the first thing to say about Ian Ferguson is that if ever there was an example of a player who put Rangers first, it was Ian Ferguson.
I think that's what happens when you bring, like we're trying to talk about now in the modern era, people that get the club and they do anything for the club. And I think that's what you got for Ian Ferguson. It was just a player that it didn't matter what you asked him to do, he's doing it. And he'll give you, he might know some of his limitations as a player, which he changed his style, everything to be there. But if you want somebody in the field to play when you're into a war and a battle in a game, it would probably be Ian Ferguson. It's the best way to say it, isn't it? Obviously, just before my time, some of it, I remember bits and bobs, and I've always seen loads, and I've always heard back. I always hear his famous quote, but I'll leave that one to you when you want to say it. But he's probably the perfect example of a teammate that was selfless in every situation, but he turned up. And I think that's the biggest thing. You always think about players now. They can turn up 50% of the time and they don't care. Ian Ferguson was 150% on the park every single minute he played. And even when he wasn't playing, he was still doing the same for the touchlines if he was ever benched. And he would always make sure in training the players knew what they expected to do. And if they didn't turn up on the weekend, there's certain players that would just let them know come the Sunday and the Monday. Ian Ferguson was the epitome of a Rangers player and somebody as a fan who gave everything for the club. They said the ultimate team player doesn't necessarily mean he was a superstar, but he's probably one of the biggest personalities in the dressing room, and that's sometimes what you need for players like Ian Ferguson.
Yeah, and he's got some medal collection as well. So 336 games, 42 goals, 10 league titles, 3 Scottish Cups, 5 League Cups, plus a Scottish Cup with St Mirren. So he must need a big display cabinet in his house. Him and Richard Gough and Alan McCoist were the 3 that played in all 9 of the 9 in a row seasons. Although I don't know if Alan McCoist got a medal for one of them because he didn't play 10 games in 94, 95.
Might have been the broken
leg. Now he probably managed to get one anyway, but I don't know.
Managed to steal one for someday if you know how McCoist operates.
and obviously Ferguson's 10th medal because he made 10 appearances in Dick Advocaat's season. So he got one for that season. Yeah, I'll give you his quote. Well, I'll give you his quote if I can remember it.
Get it.
I only have because he was teetotal, wasn't he? So, but he says, I only have a drink when Rangers win a trophy. There's some people think I'm an alcoholic. Was that it?
That was pretty much it. That's pretty much it.
I'm thinking that's the one you mean. Yeah, he was. Yeah. So an absolutely huge part in NRO, and I suppose a lot of people's memory from him will be the time that Paolo Di Canio fell out with him at the end of a game at Parkhead.
I'll get you outside. But Di Canio was very quick to leave the park, as the easiest way to describe it.
He just picked entirely the wrong person to try and kid on. He's one of the Italian mafia.
I'd like it to matter if you're Italian mafia or not. Ian Ferguson, if you're on the park and he's only the one that's coming out with the winners' medal.
Correct. My personal memory of him is that first 9 in a row season that I was talking about, season 88-89, the supporters club, I was a member of them. We used to have an annual Player of the Year dance, and it was in the old Edmiston house, the one that get demolished before the new one get built. It was in there, and he was our Player of the Year in 88-89, and really shy. Doesn't mind me getting his picture taken with him, but see once you put a microphone in his, up on the stage, give him his trophy and put a microphone in his hand. He was really shy about saying anything, and he just got a mumbled a wee thanks very much. I'm not really very good at speaking, but I'll give you a song. And I won't tell you what he sang, right? But let's just say that he had bouncing, right? So
Trainspotting too.
It wasn't Goombaya, put it that way. So anyway, his testimonial was on July the 21st, 1999. Sunderland were there, 38,000 crowd. Rangers won 3-1. Barry Ferguson, an own goal, and Giovanni Van Bronckhorst were the 3 goal scorers. And Kevin Phillips scored for Sunderland. They'd him and Niall Quinn up front that night, who were pretty successful as far as Sunderland were concerned. I know, big man, wee man. But that was his testimonial, and we remember Ian Ferguson on July the 21st. So we'll move on to the last one, which is July the 22nd, and we'll come right up to date for you, Calvin, because I know that you've been struggling to think back on 1895 and stuff. So
I wish I was struggling to forget this one. It's I'm
only going to go back 1 year. 1 year, July the 22nd, 2025. Rangers win the first competitive match of the Russell Martin era, defeating Greek side Panathinaikos 2-0 at Ibrox in the first leg of a second round Champions League qualifier. I did the gantry that night with Stevie, so I'll talk about that in a minute. But First of all, what do you remember of that game before we talk about Russell Martin?
Oh, I think at that stage we were all really excited because I remember watching, like we're doing now, all the pre-season stuff and hearing the chat about what certain players were like, and players were going to be coming up and being the next big thing. And if you watched all the training videos, it's kind of what the Leicester fans are seeing now, and I think they're due a rude awakening when they come, because it's almost carbon copy. Everything is carbon copy for what I've seen. It's we're going to be a front foot attacking team. The players are going to put people under pressure. We're going to move the ball forward fast. So I think the full fan base went in there with what turned out to be a false sense of security. But that night, they weren't that bad. It's probably the best way of putting it. They weren't great, but they got the job. They got the job done on the night.
Well, they got the result. Certainly that.
And there was a certain young player, probably two young players-ish, that probably went, we've got a couple of good players here, and a couple of them picked up the goals.
Yeah.
So I'll let you move on and take over from there.
You can also remember it. Well, my buying memory was being on the gantry, and then at half time, we sat and we turned, and we because at that time we still did the updates to the gantry. They were all to go out, and the two were saying exactly the same thing as, how the hell have Panathinaikos not scored?
That's what I was saying to my mate beside me.
I remember they hit the post, they missed a couple of sitters. Jack Butland made 2 or 3 great saves. We were so wide open. We're sitting going, as soon as we give the ball away, there was like 2 defenders against 4 running on them. It was just mental.
And it summed up what's happened for the next three months. The space that we offered for a team that was pretty poor at going forward and getting bodies up the park, we still managed to leave very little at the back in return.
I remember Raskin was playing out in the left almost as a second left back, and it was weird. So you might have a run in front of you, I don't know, but how can I shot at what the starting 11 was in Russell Martin's first game?
Right, Jack Butland,
there you go. You've got
that was an easy one. Right back. Did he start Max Arns? Was Max Arns there at the time?
Max Arns was there at the time, but he played left back that night.
So there'd been Tav.
Yeah.
Right back, Max Arns left back, John Suter and Giga.
Yep.
Well. It's because I've tried to erase this run from my memory, to be honest, Davey. So you're making this really hard.
Yeah, so you've got 3 midfield. You've got 3 midfield.
God, who started that night? This is going to annoy me.
Raskin,
Diamandi.
Yeah. There you go. I was going to say 2 of the 3 have been.
There you go.
Raskin, Diamandi, yeah.
And the third.
No, the third midfielder at the end of the game that night, I remember Stevie saying to Russell Martin at the press conference how impressed he was with this guy the first time he'd seen him. Joe Rothwell.
Aye, I was thinking, well, I've definitely erased him for the memory because he's annoyed me. He was just a guy with a red face to me that was buzzed every time he came on the park. After that might have been the last half decent display that he had.
I think it was the only half decent display. Yeah, he looked as fit as me.
Yep, Antman in the left. No, Antman, sorry. Gassama was trying to say in the left. Antman came.
No, was a substitute. He was a substitute that night. The guy that scored the first goal was in the left.
Curtis
was in the left.
Dessler started up front, did they not?
Nope. So on the centre forward was Danilo. And on the right, Russell Martin's favourite player at the start of his tenure was Kieran Dow.
That's why I don't remember the right-hand side. I always thought Dessler, because Dessler started against Poulsen, didn't he? I'm sure it was Dessers, Gassama and Antman before we had the best team in the world. That's why I went with Dessers up front.
Yeah, I think you're right.
That'd have been before they went to Panathinaikos.
The 4 subs that were used were Dessers, who came on for Danilo, Igaman, who came on for Dow, Gassama, who came on for Curtis, and Bajrami, who came on for Rothwell. So I don't know how much I forgot about that first spell there. I forgot Igaman was still near Rangers at the time because I did erase that full Russell Martin era off in my head. After we did the season review video a few weeks ago, I never want to think about Russell Martin's Rangers team ever again. Well, as you said, though, we scored 2 good goals in the second half. Yeah. Young Curtis cut in for the wing and scored a cracking goal. I don't know, 10 minutes or something in the second half. Then they got a player sent off, and then Gassama came on and he scored within 2 or 3 minutes. We thought we had the reincarnation of Laudrup coming for the left-hand side of that stage, didn't we?
Yeah.
He actually scored a few European goals in that first bit of the season.
He did, and the second one was away to Panathinaikos when he came off the bench again, and he cut inside and just drifted around the back post. And we thought, here we go, we've got ourselves a player.
So it was the first of the Russell Martin 17 games, and I think it's fair to say of those 17, there's probably only another one or two that we actually thought we played quite well in. Of them all.
And they were kind of in Europe, most of them, the ones in the league. None in
the league. No. Pilsen at home, and I'm thinking maybe Hibs in the League Cup.
And we probably arguably had a better away performance against Panathinaikos than we did at home, because we were kind of just hard to beat, made them came down, Gassama come on and got that goal, and the stadium erupted over there.
Yeah.
Other than that,
so
not much.
What I was going to finish on was, I've just read out the team. How many of them are going to play under Derek McInnes at the start of this season? So that was Butlin's away, Tavernier's away, Suter's maybe away at time of recording, Giga's away, Aarons is away, Raskin we all think is going to leave,
but we don't know.
Northwell's away.
Yep.
Landy's still there. Dill's away. Curtis is still there. Danilo we all expect to leave.
Yep.
And the 4 subs that come on, Dessers is away, Igaman's away, and Gassama and Bajrami are both still there.
Well, if we go down that then, let's be honest, we probably as a support think Raskin will go at some point in this window, because if he doesn't, we're kind of missing the mark on the player trading model with him, because it's unlikely that he's taking a new contract with interest that's been shown. So if we say there's a chance he might play, but realistically, if the bid comes out at the right time, he's not. Diamande seems to be in the short window, so he's probably not going to play unless nobody comes in. Gassama is a player with an attitude that I think Derek McInnes will hate, or he'll either push it out of him very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Curtis, for me, he's one of the boys that I think McInnes, after watching him make work with him, he'll take to him really, really well. I imagine he'll be the type of player that just wants to run through a brick wall for Rangers and give everything he's got. So for me, he'll play. And surprisingly, I think Bajrami might be one of the kind of surprise packages under McInnes. Not guaranteed to be a starter, but I think whenever I think of Bajrami, you can see he's got technical ability, but he does tend to give everything that he's got, even though sometimes he's playing in teams that are a wee bit wayward. I think he's got an attitude that kind of suits being at Rangers, but he maybe hasn't been one. I think he's very hard to play in his actual position. He's not a winger. He probably is a 10.
No, I think he is a 10.
Which we haven't really seen from him very much. The only time we've probably seen him playing the 10 was in the cup final, the semi-final against Celtic, and he pretty much took McGregor out of the game with everything that he'd done. So he can follow instructions. So that, for me, right away, is a big positive under a Derek McInnes thing, because he wants players that if he tells them to do something, they're going to do it. So I think he might be the surprise package. If he doesn't get sold, that he could work his way into a Derek McInnes team. That's my surprise package. So that's a bit different for Dougie. Asgard's going to be the player of the year. One.
Yeah, well, if I can slag Walter Smith, you can sit here and tell me that Bajrami is going to be the surprise package.
I'm not saying he's going to be a player, but he could be because he's got the attributes that kind of suit McInnes, in my opinion. And I heard the accent earlier on your training video, and I quite liked it. All right, mate.
Anyway, so I thought rather than talk about Russell Martin again, because I've talked about Russell Martin in a previous one of these history pods, and it just takes me down this plug hole that I don't want to go back down. So
you don't want to leave the house for a couple of days. I know the feeling.
No, exactly. So I'll finish by saying that 1 year ago on July the 22nd, we actually had one of our few positive nights under Russell Martin, and I'll leave it at that.
I like that.
And that takes us to the end of this week in history, Calvin. Have you enjoyed yourself?
Aye, as I said, David, listening to you and your knowledge is something that is impressive every time, how you can always have this information. And if any listeners don't know, if anybody puts any question up in our group chat, there is a very rare occasion when David comes back with the wrong answer. It is amazing.
I invented Google. I just didn't tell you that.
The Google's up there, my friend.
Anyway, thanks very much for joining us. I really do appreciate it. And I hope those watching have enjoyed this week in history. Before we go, we've always got to thank our sponsors, and we've got lots of new sponsors for this season. So CBD Oil Scotland, LBJ Consultants, Metaclad Ltd, our roofing specialists, Candid, Amrit and his gelato. I called it ice cream and I got a row. Elite Scooters and Aesthetics Lounge by Sharon, which is in Duke Street in Glasgow, which is just round the corner from where I was born.
And I love that you called it aesthetics rather than athletics, like a few other folk have done.
Yeah. So that's the end of this week in history for another week. Next week, I've got a little surprise for everyone. I've got a special guest on with me, but I'm not going to tell you who it is, so you'll see next week. But for now, it's thanks everybody for watching. Thanks again to Calvin for taking part. Really appreciated it. And bye for now.
The Four Lads Rangers podcast is sponsored by Candid, LBJ Consultants, CBD Oil Scotland, Elite Scooter Scotland and Metaclad, Four Lads exclusive roofing partner. The Aesthetic Lounge by Sharon. In partnership with Black Rooster, Art of Gold and Rangers Youth Development Company. Thank you for listening to or watching the podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Four Lads podcast is delighted to be sponsored by CBD Oil Scotland. Get a massive 30% off now for all their gummies and their oils. Go and check them out. These help with things like stress, anxiety, sleep patterns, mood, depression, even stuff like fibromyalgia. Go and check them out, cbdoilscotland.com. Use the code 4lads to get a massive 30% off. You enter right now and you'll be in the hospitality draw for tickets for Rangers versus West Ham, Derek McInnes' first game in charge, and you will get that opportunity not only to get 30% off, but you'll also be in the draw for hospitality tickets for West Ham. If you don't want to use the website, you can come into either shop here in Thornley Bank or in Kinnan Park. It's called Bits and Bongs. You go in there, use the code 4lads and you'll get a massive 30% off. We're delighted CBD Oil Scotland are sponsoring 4lads. Check it out and go and help yourself to some oils, some gummies with a fantastic 30% off.